As many of you know, I have concluded writing a new book. It's extremely controversial. It's entitled, Why Now is the Perfect Time to Wave a Friendly Goodbye to Quebec. And it's well researched. And I have come to the conclusion that now is the perfect time. There are a lot of things that I have discovered and point out. For decades, I have been a staunch supporter of national unity, helped to organize that famous Montreal rally. I have had several awards for promoting national unity. But I've changed my mind. I have just come to the conclusion that now is a perfect time. We can do it very friendly. The passions are gone. I think that Quebec could go right now. I think that if an election or a referendum were held in the rest of Canada, that most Canadians would vote to let her go and do it very friendly. And by the way, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, and this is one of the revelations that I stumbled upon. It is now a fact that Quebec is sitting on an estimated 46 billion barrels of oil and several trillion cubic feet of natural gas, very close to the surface, very easily recoverable. It is my feeling, and I point this out in the book, that the reason Quebec is not exploiting these natural resources but continues to drain billions of dollars from the rest of Canada is that if at this point they were to tap into those resources, oil and gas, they would have to share some of the revenue, a lot of the revenue, with the rest of Canada. And the intent is that during the next referendum campaign, they are going to bring this fact to light. And this, of course, will convince Quebecers that they would be much better off financially, and they would. Can you imagine? They estimate that there is twice as much oil, sweet oil, available in Quebec as from the Hibernia project just off the coast of Newfoundland. It contains the voices of 90 of you, many of you, your opinions. More than 300 people emailed me, and I've used 90 of them in the book. 46. This has now been confirmed that beneath the soil of Quebec, much of it on Anacostia Island, and in an area called Old Harry, which is in the northernmost Magdalen Islands, right near the Labrador border. 46 billion barrels of oil, much of it very close to the surface. In fact, at Old Harry, some of the oil is so close to the surface that it leaks up through the soil and into the ocean. So they are sitting on 46 billion barrels, twice the amount of oil in Hibernia, and many trillion cubic feet of natural gas. So all of those arguments about, Quebec will never go because it can't afford to, if and when they tap into those resources, it will become certainly rival Alberta as the richest province in the country. And if it's on its own, it'll be even richer. And that's the argument that you can be sure the separatists are going to use the next time there's a referendum. What they are going to say, and I point this out in the book, what they are going to say is, look, if we remain in Canada, we're going to have to share the wealth with the rest of the country. But if we in Quebec become a republic, if we become independent, then we don't have to share that revenue with anybody. And they'll be able to give you the figures of how much money that will put into the pockets of every single taxpayer in Quebec. That, I believe, will tip the scales. And it also negates the argument that I've heard from many people in the rest of Canada, Quebec will never go because they can't afford to. As a matter of fact, there could be an argument, and I go through this, and the facts are there in the book, folks. I go through this very, very carefully, that in fact, Quebec will be better off financially if they do go on their own than they would otherwise.
Si un jour on produit du pétrole au Québec.
Saying if one day we produce oil, why would we share those profits with Ottawa?
The name of the game is publish or perish. If you don't want to publish, I'll take over your show, Lowell. Have a good one.
Rob writes, Lowell, please publish, no self-censorship. If we cannot handle controversial opinions, we do not deserve to be a country.
Like, Quebec is willing to take money from the dirty Alberta oil, right?
Yes.
Yes, but they don't want to develop theirs because they'd have to share with the rest of Canada.
Well, that's my assumption. They claim that, it's the environmentalists that are stopping us. But in doing my research and finding some of the quotes made, it's pretty obvious. I mean, let's face it. If Quebec were to exploit this 46 billion barrels of oil now, they'd have to share a good chunk of that with the rest of Canada. But if they're an independent nation, they don't have to share a single cent of it.
Well, that doesn't say much about them, does it?
No, it does not. They are sitting, Quebec right now is sitting, and this is proven, on 46 billion barrels of oil, Anacostia Island, and a place called Old Harry, the Magdalen Islands, and many trillions of cubic feet of natural gas. But it changes the whole debate. Emails pouring in. George writes, Lowell, how long has Quebec known about the oil below Anacostia Island? Decades ago, Anacostia was owned by a large American company. They used it for fishing and hunting. A few years ago, the Americans were forced to sell Anacostia to the Quebec government. Maybe the Quebec government has been hiding this valuable resource in order to get more money from Alberta. I think there's plenty of evidence that, in fact, Quebec, for a number of years, has been hiding the fact that they are sitting on huge oil and gas reserves. And I think they're doing it for a purpose. Leo from New Brunswick writes, Lowell, if your unpublished book is the only thing holding Canada together, we have bigger problems than you publishing the book. Do it. What I'm saying is that I think that at this point, that we can waive what I call a very friendly, a velvet divorce. I give the example of the separation of the Czech Republic and Slovakia. It used to be Czechoslovakia. It took them only 9 months to come to a decision. They separated very amicably, and both nations are much better off today than they were before, and they are friendlier than they ever were before. Velvet divorce.
We're so different from the rest of Canada, not only from the language, but the values, the principle, the type of society we want. We're not the same people. We don't want the same thing. It's a different culture. In my opinion, Quebec has to separate from the rest of Canada.
There was a time when Quebec was part of my Canada. I contributed money for that big trip to Montreal, etc. But that time was gone. The racism, particularly as we've seen it this week, the racism that we're seeing, it's just too much.
A new film is sounding the alarm about the use of English and bilingual commercial signs in downtown Montreal.
Their film La Langue à Terre shows that anger about English is boiling up again.
Look at that. I love Italian shoes. It's an insult for us.
The latest anti-English vandalism and graffiti, including Here We Speak French, targeting Anglophones at Quebec City's Laval University.
I've heard of kids maybe being beaten up in elementary school because they're English in a French school, but we're at a university level, and I find it outrageous that such a thing could happen.
In Montreal, two hardline francophone groups launching a phone campaign against the provincial government. They oppose the Dial 9 for English option on government phone lines.
Now, on the surface, these all seem like petty fights, but they're symptomatic of a growing sense of intolerance in Quebec against the Anglophone minority.
I mean, I did a lot of research and I did a lot of soul searching. The fact of the matter is that over 250,000 Anglophones and about 100,000 allophones fled the province of Quebec. It's the greatest exodus of a people in peacetime in the Western world ever. And there was hardly a peep of protest from a single person in the province of Quebec.
It's been a massive exodus. In 20 years, 300,000 English-speaking people have left Montreal, left Quebec. It's one of the great migrations of Canadian history.
You know what?
I have published in this book are 90 stories from people, many of whom were forced out of Quebec, and some of the stories make you sob. Now, one of the things that I found is that there's a recent poll done. There's the Anglos today comprise only 7.7% of Quebec's population. 42% of them said they are preparing to leave.
But one other previous caller, I think it was, said they're simply drawing money from Ontario, from the rest of the provinces of Canada in an effort to position themselves. Time to let them
Murray,
go.
did you know that they are sitting on vast reserves of oil and gas?
Not until you mention it today, and that's exceptionally troubling that successive governments in the province of Quebec have, I'm sure, hidden that. There's got to be, the press keep talking about the Harper agenda, the hidden agenda. There has to be a similar situation in the province of Quebec, a hidden agenda that's been there for years, who knows, maybe all the way back to René Lévesque. We don't know, but indeed, when does it end? We might as well end it soon and cut our line.
Friendly. Thank you for the call. But all I'm saying is, hey, if they could do it in Czechoslovakia And they had a far more problems to deal with than we have here. They didn't even have a clearly defined boundary there. They managed to do. Are we a less of a people in Canada than they were in Czechoslovakia? I don't think so.